Hey, if you stick around to the end of the video, I've got a special. I'm going to play the song Blackbird that I learned when I was 14. So check it out. Stay to the end. See ya. Bye. Hey, everybody. My name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title podcast. When I was 14 years old, my sister, who was 10, got a guitar. And guitar being the coolest instrument there is, she didn't play it. And because I'm cooler than my sister, and hopefully she listens to this podcast and realizes that, I started playing. And it started with just, like Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars. And I moved on to something a little more complicated. And my dad, who grew up as a musician, said, Danny, let me show you a song. So he showed me Blackbird by the Beatles. And I slowly got my fingers right, and then I got my fingers moving, and after about a week, it turned into a song, and it's a beautiful song. And that moment of where someone showed me something, and I put it inside my brain, and it came out, and I learned something was magical. And I think that's a very human experience. And my guest, Jerry, he's dedicated his life to, bringing that magic of education and learning to the world. So, Jerry, why don't you tell me what it is that you do in the education space, the entertainment space? What is that?
Yeah, well, actually, what we do is exactly what you just described in your story, which I love that story, by the way. Great song. So my whole company, our mission is to make learning fun and make learning easy. And we do that by creating really fun educational entertainment. We used to make TV shows. Now we're mostly making podcasts. And our goal is to just inspire curiosity in adults and kids to really get people excited to learn and to discover. And then we also really focus on creating opportunities for connection between adults and kids, in particular through some of our shows that are geared towards families, because we just know that, when parental relationships are strong, and especially we're talking about dads on this show,
Yep.
When those relationships are strong and founded on this feeling of trust and respect and curiosity and excitement, that's when the magic happens for kids and for growing up.
That's awesome. Now, I know you're in the entertainment world. What got you down the road of the entertainment or education as entertainment? Because I read your bio, you have done a lot, National Geographic, you worked with some big names, Disney and all that. What inspired you to go down that route? Because you could have made the 17th Marvel movie, right? You could have been a part of that, but why education? Why for you with education?
Danny, let me tell you a story.
Okay, tell me.
So when I was a kid, I was really, really bad at math and science in school. And yet, I was really interested in that stuff outside of school, specifically science and space. And I really just struggled with learning in school. But if my dad and some other folks got me into model rocketry, which is math and science, and I started learning how to build rockets and different kinds of engines and how the different engines worked. And, in order to be safe with those things, you had to learn the science of it. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm learning the science of propulsion and the science of space and all this stuff, but I'm learning it in a very hands-on way from working with miniature versions of rockets in a way that I didn't learn in school. And I didn't understand at the time, but that just meant I was more of an experiential learner, a term that I did not know when I was 14 years old.
Right.
And so I always, I'd always continued being fascinated by just how the world works. And I did go off into television. I had a career for the first decade in television that absolutely could have led to me working on the, 17th Marvel movie, or I was working with Dick Wolf, who does Law and Order for many years. I worked on Sex and the City. So my path did look like it was heading that direction. But I always in the back of my head was like, I wonder if we could use TV to help people learn, in a fun way, not in a dry documentary way. And the opportunity came up when I got to work with National Geographic at one point, about 15 years into producing television. And they wanted to make a show about the human brain. And, no disrespect to National Geographic, who I've done great work with, but a lot of their prior documentaries were quite dry and really only interesting to people who were already into neuroscience. And so my thought was, this is the opportunity to make a science show that is for people who don't think they're into science, right? And to see if we can play with this and get this new audience, new people. And so we created this show called Brain Games that was a really fun, exciting, and kind of lean-in interactive TV show that taught people about neuroscience who never thought in a million years they could understand neuroscience or behavioral psychology. And so sort of that connection from my experience as a kid, and then all of the work that I did in television, and then having that opportunity to reconnect those things together. From that point forward, there was no way I was not going to keep doing that. I mean, I was like, this is no one does it as well as we do. No one's as excited about it as us. No one's as willing to do the hard things that it takes to make learning fun as we are. and we get so much excitement from it here, everyone at this company. So it just was a clear pathway. Like I was like, I'm not doing the other stuff anymore. This is what we're doing.
That's cool. Now you mentioned you wanted to make TV like the tool to get kids or people interested in science. What is your take on, like, I fight a little bit, I've got 3 kids. I got a 6-year-old up to 16. So I've got the span. What is your take on, sometimes I feel like I need to beat the iPad. Like I need to be more entertaining than the iPad. I need to, like they're zoned in. Like we just went on a 12-hour road trip. My kids got their iPads. We made sure they're fully charged and we didn't have to talk for 12 hours. That's okay. Is it wrong, you think, to try to say, like, how do I beat the iPad? Or is it, how do I incorporate the iPad, like, to make, because that's what they're going to use. Like, what is your take on technology and, like, how does that, what's your take on that?
You're not going to beat the iPad, first of all. Like, so let me just make that easy. Yeah. So they're one.
Yeah.
But no, so we look at, this is exactly how we think about everything. It's like, there's all these things that are in everyone's lives. There's iPads, there's screens, there's iPhones, there's, Android, like Google, like all this stuff that we're all like looking at. And so our thought is, how do we find entry points into what's already happening? And so one of the reasons we've gone heavily into podcasting was that, we realized during the pandemic that kids were on screens all the time. And so we thought, how can we get kids off of the screen in a way that still feels as fun as if they were watching a screen, right? And so we created this show called Who Smarted, which was continues to go even post-pandemic. It's this 15-minute, 3 times a week show that it's as fun as watching a TV show, or it's fun as fun as playing a game, but it's also teaching kids about science and history. And so our thought was, use what we know work. Why do kids watch iPads? Why do kids play on iPads? Because they're fun, right? And they're also really addictive, and they're fast, and there's a lot happening. So we took all of the psychology of that and put it into an audio show that's as fun as playing those games. And for us to answer the second part of your question about, like, is that cool that they're on the iPad for 12 hours, or like, how does dad get into that? So all of our work is designed to be listened to by kids and parents together.
Okay.
So that if you're in the car on a 12-hour road trip and you want to take an hour off the iPads, put on Who Smarted, and you're going to enjoy it. They're going to enjoy it. And then after every episode, you can actually talk about what you've learned and what else you want to learn and what else you want to discover. So we see, whether it's our shows or other audio content, it's like an opportunity to like experience something fun together, and then actually spark conversation and further exploration. So now you're having connection with your kids. So that's really our goal with these projects.
As I've been able to be a parent for 16 years, one thing, in education is important. What I realized is that getting your kids to realize that they can learn by not having all the information, like not having just the details. Because I think when you're in high school, at least for me, it was like pass the test, like teacher gives you answers, you put them in your brain. On Monday, you spit them out. I am a fireman and I teach at the fire academy. And it's funny because we get high schoolers come out and they want me to give them the answers. What would you do for here? And I'll go, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I'm like, well, it's a dynamic situation. Thousands of things could happen, but I know this piece and this piece. I put them together to create that. How do you think a dad encourages, outside of just general knowledge, how do you think you encourage them to like be that curious? Like, I have the ability to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that is a great question. And so one of the things we see happen a lot with parents is when a kid's asking questions, the parent can get overwhelmed and say, like, stop asking so many questions.
Yeah, why?
Right. Why? The whys, right? And so we suggest, we're like, you know what? Nothing will shut down a kid's natural curiosity and their ability to learn critical thinking faster than telling them to stop asking questions, right? So like, that's a really good way to like shut them down. And so instead of that, it's like, look, but we also get it. Like, as a parent, you're not always in the headspace. Sometimes you don't even have the information. Sometimes you're just annoyed that you don't know the answer. So you're like, enough with the questions, right? So maybe a better approach is to say, look, I don't have the answer, and neither do you, and we're not going to figure it out right now. So why don't you have a little notebook, write your question down, and let's have like a power hour, dad and kid thing, like when we can all sit, and whether we're going to the library, whether we're looking online on Google and exploring sources, it becomes an opportunity for your kid to say, first of all, adults don't have all the answers. That's cool to see, right? Takes a lot for some parents to admit that. And then it also lets your kid drive research, which is going to teach them not just the answer to the actual question, but it's going to be an opportunity to learn about how to do research. how to look at different kinds of sources, how to weigh one source over another. Doing that with, with you as their dad, it's like, wow, you're going to be learning as well. And so it's just an opportunity to develop critical thinking, research skills, and all of that. So that's one way we suggest to do it. And then the other is, whether it's podcasts or books or anything like that, try and consume, if your kid's watching something educational, try and consume some of it with them so then you can have a conversation about it afterwards, right? Because that's where you're really going to develop something beyond just the absorption of information, but the ability to critically discuss it and ask questions of them. Those are two things that we think are really, really effective, and the research shows are very effective at building critical thinkers.
On the research side, where are you professionally? Did you have a history? Did you go to school for some of this? You have on your staff, do you have, developmental psychologists? Where are you getting, like, where are you getting your research? Like, who's
Yeah. Yeah. So I am not a researcher, right? I mean, I know how to do research, but I'm not a child psychologist or a researcher in education. So we do hire those people. We've hired the UCLA Center for Scholars and Storytellers has done research with us and focus groups around how we communicate to children and how they learn and sort of the pace of information. There's many researchers that we've hired that we've worked with for older kids, like the 7 to 10-year-olds, that really help us understand how kids engage with material and how their brains work and how they're developing. So we have researchers on staff, we have educators, we have STEM consultants, and so that's where we really get our research.
And if you're, as a dad, where should if I'm trying to research, like my kids have questions, is there other than just straight Google, and maybe that is the right answer, go Google it. Where should we be getting the answers that we can trust to science questions, or maybe, like, I don't know. Do you have kids?
I don't.
Okay. So there's the Common Core math.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're very familiar with it. Like, how do I teach them how to do that? Like where it's a good resource to go out and get solid information to help with that, other than Who Smarted podcast.
Yeah. No, that's it. Just Who Smarted. I'm just kidding.
That's it. All you need.
Yeah, so there's a source called the Khan Academy that's good for teaching some math and science stuff. I'm going to get you the link to it, but I think it's called like ABC Mouse.
I've seen that. Yep.
Yeah, so there some of these that are, these are like, so you might have to pay for them, or some of them like are free, some are low cost, but any of these sites that are geared towards Common Core curriculum that actually have been built by at least having some teams of actual STEM educators on staff is helpful. But, honestly, YouTube is a huge help. Like, if you can find an educator on YouTube that's like, here's how parents can teach their kids the new math, because I'll tell you what, we're doing this Mysteries About True History show that has math in it. And they were showing me how we have to teach the kids math. And I'm like, I don't understand. I didn't understand it. It's so different from how I learned math. So,
and I think that's a little scary not scary is not the right word, but it's intimidating. Like when I think sometimes when you don't know the answer and you feel like as a parent, you should always know, but I don't think that's a fair, because I didn't do Common Core math, but I did talk to a teacher. And I think this is important. If you're a parent, you don't understand what your kids are learning, I wouldn't ask, and my school actually doesn't currently do it, but I asked them, like, why are they doing this? Explain why there's 10 things that you write down, and why not just add 32 plus 42? It's not the process of doing math, because if it was just plugging in the numbers, use your calculator in your phone. It's the process of thinking. And when I figured that out, I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing. You're trying to get my kids to think, which is kind of the point of what you're doing. It's not just shove the information in their brain, because our kids are going to need that critical thinking, because the actual getting the details isn't probably as important anymore, because we have Chat GPT. Like we have these tools to get the details, but it's thinking through them.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What is your take on technology with things like AI? And like initially I was like, this is crazy, but I'm like, man, if my kids don't know how to use this, they're going to be behind. What's your take?
Yeah, they have to know how to use it. It's not going anywhere. It's going to become part of, I don't have the terrifying, the AI is going to take us over kind of view.
Come in and the Terminator is going to blow us up.
Every time we introduce any new technology, there's always a bunch of people who are like, here comes the Terminator, right? So, but the truth is AI, I think of it as like an assistant that helps take out some of the grunt work from some of the, whether it's research or outlining, or you can sort of play with it to go through analysis and some critical thinking. It is a tool that kids do need to know how to use, but it's also a great opportunity as a parent to show kids that AI doesn't always get it right. AI sometimes gets facts wrong. it'll make things up. And so it's like, it's also a fun opportunity to be like, this artificial intelligence, it's supposed to know everything, still messes things up. And so how do you fact check the AI, right? So that's an interesting process that you can teach kids. And it's actually, to your point, it's a skill set they should have because they're going to need it.
For sure. Like, I mean, me, at work, we talk a lot. What's our past? If we're not fighting fires, we're talking and we're watching things and going, now we're like, is that real? Watching it, and you can't tell. It's like, man, we're all like, I don't think that's, you're doubting everything. I know for sure that's something that, as my older kids, at least, hey man, everything you see on TikTok is not real. It's literally made up. It's false. And it's a little scary, but I think it's part of the, being a thinker. And that's what I want out of my kids. I want my kids to be thinkers, even if, that maybe they'll never go to college, I don't know, but I want them to have that base of thinking, just like you have it inside you. So yeah, I think that's important.
Which makes sense then in terms of why your school's explaining about Common Core, right? Because it's teaching them how to think.
Yeah. For sure. So you have the podcast, The History. Is it another podcast, The History?
So Mysteries About True Histories is for like kids who are a little bit older. So like 9 to 11-year-olds. Really, Mysteries About True Histories teaches logic and math and history through problem solving. It's a narrative story about these two kids who travel through space and time solving problems. Our other show, Who Smarted, is typically more for younger kids, like 6 to 10. And that really is just a fun narrative show where they're learning about history and culture, and they do little quizzes in the show to keep them thinking and engaged. So those are our two big family shows.
Awesome. Hey, I listened to a couple of them before we got on, and then I went on
Cool.
break games because I was like, man, I feel like I know that, and I do. Like I've seen a bunch of them. Like
right on.
Hand is faster than the eye. It's really cool. I think you're doing some excellent things. Is there a question that I didn't ask that you want to answer?
No, man, this was great. You asked so many good questions. I can't think of anything.
Cool. So if you're a guy and you've got kids, get them off the iPad, plug them into wherever you can listen to podcasts, which is where you're listening to me. So listen to your entire podcast. Listen to Who's Smarter. Now I have a quiz for you, or a challenge before we wrap this up. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, it's a tongue twister, right? You might say fart, just so you know. All right, ready? It is one smart fellow, he felt smart. Two smart fellows, both felt smart. Say what you got.
One smart fellow, he felt smart. Two smart fellows, they felt smart.
You nailed it. Most people say fart at some point.
Dang. Sorry. And I'm the guy who should be saying it. I have a podcast. It's a fart joke.
I have a theory about guys. All men are 13-year-olds, and the only thing that is separating us is one fart joke. Be around 100%. A bunch of serious men, and you can tell one fart joke, and we all revert to 13 years old. Jerry, this was awesome. I appreciate it. I will link all your information. LinkedIn. Where would you like guys to reach out if they've got?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. If they have questions for me, if they just want to check out our stuff, whosmarted.com is a great place with all the Who Smarted episodes.
Cool. I will link that, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Danny.
All right. Bye. So if you've stayed to the end of the podcast, this is the special at the end. This is the very first song that I learned, Blackbird by the Beatles. Now, this is not the official version. It's pretty close. It's what I learned when I was 14, so I'll play it just like I learned it. I'll play it through twice, and hopefully you enjoyed. Thanks for staying to the end. I hope you liked it. See ya.